Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into another live session with us here at Dream Data. Good morning if you're at where my guest sits, and good afternoon if you're in Europe like I am. I'm so pleased to be here today because when I looked at Jay's website, I was almost dropping my jaw. We're talking 7 books. We're talking Hall of Fame for speaking, word of mouth excellence, the biggest brands in the world. Jay have all been working with these, so I'm super excited to drill into your brain and to your world, Jay, and hopefully be able to learn just a bit of what you're doing. But if people have been checking your LinkedIn, they probably dropped the jaw a little bit like I did. But what presentation do you go by nowadays if people don't know you and have to get to learn you a little bit?
Yeah, that's just a long introduction to say that I'm old and I've been doing this a long time, but I thank you for being so kind. Also, 1/4 Danish, if that gets me extra credit on this
Oh,
show, by the
wow.
way. Yeah,
Nice.
so I got that going for me. I guess I more often build now as a business growth, customer experience and marketing advisor and researcher. I primarily write books and give speeches now and create content. I had a global consulting firm for 13 years called Convince and Convert, still an amazing firm doing lots of great work for big B2B brands all over the world. I sold that firm a couple years ago to be able to spend time mostly writing and speaking. And then my side job, I am now the #2 tequila influencer in the world. So I work with lots of tequila brands, helping them sell tequila all around the world.
That's fantastic. And yeah, actually, when you look at your website, you can see there was it 5 businesses you've actually built and sold over the
Yeah,
years.
yeah, that's right.
That's amazing. Like how come you're so good at at this discipline?
Uh, I don't, I don't know that I'm that good at it. I've only really ever been in that sort of professional services area. So starting another professional services company and then another professional services company isn't that big of a trick. You just sort of change the logo once your contract is up.
Yeah.
I actually wish I was smarter and was able to build some kind of software business or some sort of recurring revenue. I'm terrible at recurring revenue, like the worst. I'm great at very expensive, very bespoke selling things one at a time.
Yeah.
I'm good at that, like speeches. I'm not great at recurring revenue, but thanks. I'm actually really fortunate in that I got started in this whole world so early. I don't know if you know this story, Stefan, that I started in the internet business when domain names were still free. So before Google, before Yahoo, before anything, and you could get any domain name you wanted and not even pay for it because why would you
What?
even want to have a website? That was literally the question that people would ask. Like, what would I do with a website? What is a website? That's how
Yeah.
long ago it was. This is 31 years ago now. And my partners and I, in my first company that we ran, we registered a bunch of domain names, again, for nothing. And one of those domain names was Budweiser.com, which, of course, is the largest beer in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And we got a letter in the mail because email wasn't even used then. We got a letter from Anheuser-Busch, which at that time owned the brand, and said, "We're going to build the first ever website for Budweiser, and we'd like to have the domain name." I said, "Well, we're young. I think I was 23 years old. We're young, but we're not stupid, so we're not just going to give it to you." So we negotiated, right? Had
Yeah.
attorneys,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we sold Budweiser.com in 1993 for 50 cases of beer. 50 cases of beer is what we sold it for. So that's how long I've been doing this. So some of my success, if you call it that, is being. I've only made 2 good decisions in my whole life. Really, I've made 2 good decisions. Decision 1, convincing my wife to marry me, which took a lot of convincing. Like I can't even tell you. I've never worked that hard at anything. Like I'm not even kidding. That was the best decision. Second best decision was getting involved in sort of digital marketing, literally at the very, very, very beginning, and
Yeah.
having the good sense to sort of stay in it in some form or fashion ever since.
I can't even imagine how the landscape was back then for digital marketing.
I mean, there was. Can I tell you a story that I've almost never told anybody? Okay,
Legit.
so this is true, and I'm a little bit embarrassed about it, but I didn't know. We didn't know. Okay, so my partners and I, same company, we actually sent the very first spam email in the history of the internet. So we had a client who was a attorney in the U.S. and wanted to be able to reach a bunch of potential clients inexpensively, and so we were able to grab a bunch of email addresses, when this didn't even exist, and sent an email to those people without permission, and it was literally the first time anybody had ever sent a spam email. And
That's
so
funny.
I just want to say that I'm sorry that that I didn't know. I didn't know what would happen. It was very innocent, and we unleashed the monster. So, what do you
Yeah,
do?
that's wonderful. But Jay, the reason why we reached out to you is actually that you're live with a fairly new book
Yeah.
where you actually surveyed
Understood.
1,900 consumers
Yeah.
as a foundation for this. Actually, I'm unaware whether you had the intention of focusing the book on speed, or did that kind of organically develop that
Great
would
question.
be the book that came
Yeah.
out of the survey afterwards?
Great question. Both. So, I've written 7 books now, and every time I write a book, the topic is a little different because yes, I'm always in sort of marketing and customer experience and business growth, but within that discipline, I feel like it's my responsibility to identify a pattern and help businesses capitalize on that opportunity for a 2 or 3 year period. And then everybody is going to do the things that I said in the book, and then you won't have that edge anymore. So, for example,
Mm,
I wrote a book about social business. I wrote a book about content marketing. I wrote a book about customer service and empathy. I wrote a book about word of mouth. And now I wrote a book about speed and responsiveness. The other books that I've written, almost everything contained in those books, businesses are doing, almost every business is doing now, right?
yeah.
But at the time, it was do this thing before your competition, and you will have a distinct advantage over your competition. And so that's why every 2 or 3 years, I'm like, okay, what's the new thing
Yeah.
that businesses in B2B in particular can do to have an edge? But then eventually everybody does it and that edge fades away. So in this case, coming out of the pandemic, I was like, it's weird. It feels to me like people's relationship with time is a little different now. The pandemic taught us a lot of lessons, of course, but one thing it reminded us is that nothing's guaranteed. Like tomorrow's not promised to us,
Yeah.
and so then we had all these trends, especially in the U.S., but really globally, all these trends about, hey, I don't want to come back to the office. I want to work from home because it's better for my time. I don't have to commute.
Yep.
Some people were sort of just resigning. It's like, I just don't want to go back to work. Big disruption in higher education as well. Just all these different trends were happening that all sort of related to our time and how we spent it. And so what I recognized was, well, wait a second. If we have a fundamental different relationship with time, surely that must present a business opportunity. But as I do with every sort of book project that I execute, I always want to validate my assumptions with real, like legitimate university
Mm.
level research. I hate when people write books or give speeches and like do this thing in your business because I say so. It's like, dude, who are
Yeah.
you? Like, why would I listen to you? Like, we have smart people in our company too. So I never want to make some sort of pronouncement without data behind it. And so I did a huge research project. It's probably the biggest research project ever, dedicated to the relationship between responsiveness and revenue. And it turns
Mm.
out it's true. Like, we do care about our time more than ever. 2/3 of customers say that speed is as important as price, which is pretty significant. And then the question becomes, okay, how many businesses are actually run as if that were true?
Mm.
And the answer is very few, because especially in B2B, what I hear all the time from leadership is, we're as fast as we can go. Like, we're doing the best we can. And I'm like, yeah, cool. But the same time that you're like, we're as fast as we need to be, your customers' expectations and desires for
Yeah.
speed keep going up, and you're staying the same. And so the difference between what they want and what you're offering is literally growing all the time. And eventually, that's going to cost you money. Like the phrase, at least in English, the phrase "time is money"
Yeah. Yeah.
has been around for like, I don't even know, like generate a long time, like a really long time.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't actually true. It's true now, and we proved it in the book. Like, it's literally true that if you give customers time, they'll give you money. If you cost customers time, it will cost you money. Like, it is a correlation between responsiveness and revenue, and I think companies need to pay attention to that.
That's a super nice insight. My brain is already like running through how we do it in our business. Are there certain areas of the business where speed matters even more? Or kind of if you were to like point the flashlight
Yep.
on certain areas where we can really leverage this to please our customers?
So we actually studied that extensively.
Oh,
We
wonderful.
we looked at the entire customer journey, and some of this
Wow.
isn't in the book, so you might not even have seen it. We looked at the entire customer journey, and then asked at each sort of node, how important is responsiveness at this point? The answer is it's always important, right? There's never a time
Yeah.
at which customers are like, whenever you get around to it is fine. Like that, there's never a point where they don't care, for sure. But they care the most at the very beginning, when they're trying to essentially decide whether they're going to hire you or somebody else, right? So
Yeah.
when they're making a choice, that's super important. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then the other area is after they purchase, anytime they've got a question or a concern, right? That sort of response loop of, hey, the thing that you sold me doesn't work.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't want to wait for an answer about that. So
Yeah.
it's sort of like the beginning and the end are the two parts that are the most important. And I would say, if I were going to implement this in a company, I would actually start at the beginning. And here's why. One of the most interesting and I think important findings in the research is that 51% of customers will hire whomever contacts them first, regardless of price. So even in a B2B situation where you might have a longer sales cycle and more people participating in a buying committee, things like that, when you're in evaluation mode and you're like, okay, I'm going to get this software or this software or this software, like you're trying to figure it out because your boss has given you a deadline or whatever. It's not like, yeah, feel free to give us an estimate or schedule the demo whenever. Like, you're like, let's get with the program. And when more than half of customers hire whomever contacts them first, regardless of price, if I was running a company, and I do run a company, I want to be first. And so, like, for example, it's a very small business now, but when somebody sends me an email, typically in our contact us form, to see, hey, can Jay come give a presentation in Malaysia? We respond to that in like 2 or 3 minutes. Because if somebody's filling out the form, they're obviously looking for a speaker, right? And the psychology of this is so important. I can't overemphasize it enough. It's really critical. In this era, today, worldwide, all people interpret speed as caring. We interpret speed as caring. I don't know that that's true necessarily, but that's how we interpret it. So let's say you have to call your accountant or your attorney. Let's say you have to call your attorney. You have some sort of legal question. So you call your attorney, you leave a voicemail, and you get a return call in 3 hours. Okay, that makes you feel one way. If you get a call in 2 days, same attorney, same message, you feel very differently about that relationship because we interpret speed as caring. And we interpret responsiveness as respect. If somebody takes too long to get back to us, we feel like they are disrespecting us because they're disrespecting. an opportunity at the top of the customer journey, at the top of the sales funnel, you should absolutely do that. Right? To be fast together, make it happen faster. And I'm telling you, you're going to make money if you do this.
That is such a brilliant point, Jay. Like I think and I already start feeling bad about the emails that I'm very slow at responding to sometimes. Fuck, man. But it's literally like in this day and age where you like when it's a scene on the Facebook message and you can see the little face moving on LinkedIn, if people care, they will reply you immediately. So I think that is really a good point. Just anecdotally, I can tell, like, I think there's a lot of companies from Europe that then try to go into the US. But if you don't have people that are awake in the time zone when the American people are awake.
It's an eight-hour gap for anything. My daughter lives in Paris. It's hard to talk to her. And I understand, like in Europe in particular, like she works in Paris. There's a little bit of a different relationship with time and speed there than there is in I get that. Like I'm not suggesting that everybody has to do it the way we do, but I am suggesting that if I had to bet, I would very much bet all my money that the rest of the world will get faster rather than the US getting slower. And partially that's AI. If everything happens faster because AI makes it faster, nobody's going to say like, hey, you know what? Next time you guys just do that more slowly. Like nobody ever says that. That's not going to happen. So
take your time. Now, I can wait. Yeah.
Even in Denmark, which is not a go, go, go culture, right? What was considered to be fast 5 years ago, right, is slow now. So even in a culture like that, which isn't as like abrupt and rushed as the US, there's already been changes in speed and responsiveness and the pace of business, right? So it's just going to continue. And I would say that B2B and Europe have a huge opportunity to get on this trend now before everybody else does.
That's really, really, really good advice. And I guess the next question is then kind of how do you like monitor the response rate or speed, time to speed to respond to all the customers that are pouring into your business?
In the book, which is called The Time to Win, and you can see how small the book is, and that is this is the actual book, and there's a reason for that. I sat down to write like a full book, as I always do, and I started writing it, and I got about 2 chapters into it, and I was like, man, wait a second, I can't ask people to spend 6 hours reading a book about speed. Like that's the exact opposite advice. That doesn't make any sense at all. So I'm like, okay, let's write a really short book that has all the key stuff in it that you can read in like 45 minutes. And it's also really expensive, of course, and really affordable. And so, that's what I did. And people love it because they do read it. They don't just skim it because it's so short, and they can put it in their shirt pocket and all that. It's been great. So in the book, there's a 6-step process. On this. But one of the ones, to your question, the one that you should do first, okay?
Yeah.
The one that everybody should do first is perform what I call a got it audit. Got it audit. And a got it audit asks you to figure out how long does it take your customers to get it? How long does it take them to get what they need? How long does it take customers to get a quote, to get a demo, to get an invoice, to pay an invoice, to get a delivery, to get help from customer support? Like the main things in your customer journey. There might be, I don't know, let's say 8 kind of key nodes in your journey. How long do those things take? Now, that sounds really obvious, Stefan, but here's the problem. When I talk to business leaders about this, here's what they tell me every time. Well, Jay, usually it takes about 2 days, but sometimes it could take 5 if it's over a weekend. And, like Julie is the one who's in charge of that. If Julie happens to be on vacation, then it might be 6 days. But you know what? If things go perfectly and they get it to us by 8, maybe it's done by the same day, maybe one day. And I'm like, stop. Just stop. That is not math. That is a collection of stories that you've told yourself. And if you're going to use speed and responsiveness as an actual competitive edge, if you're going to use it as a way to demonstrably gain and keep more customers, you have to know the actual numbers. Like you wouldn't manage your budget that way. well, we spend approximately X amount of, like, you wouldn't do that. You don't manage budgets based on anecdotes. And so you shouldn't manage time based on anecdotes. So what this requires, this first piece, the got it audit, is for you to actually look backwards in your organization, or if you can't do that, start now and measure forwards and literally track how long do these key customer intersections actually take.
Yeah.
Not how long do you think it takes, not how long did it take that one time, but like how long does it take? Because once you have a baseline, then you can actually methodically get better at that and improve the difference.
Absolutely. I'm thinking, is there any rule of thumbs here? What time is? Is it a relative measure, or is it below 1 hour or below 5 minutes, or
It's
what's kind of, yeah,
relative. On terms of actual response time. So somebody leaves a message, you got to respond to the message.
something like
Yeah,
that.
inside 4 hours is kind of what we recommend, best
Yeah.
case. But it does differ by contact mechanism, right? So phone is fastest, email second fastest, live. So there is. I don't have all the data; it's in the book, but
No.
there is a difference based on contact mechanism for sure. But definitely within 4 hours is a best practice on pretty much all contact mechanisms. But it also differs based on age.
Yeah.
So this part totally blew me away in the research. I didn't see this coming.
Yeah.
I really didn't. The most patient generation, the group of customers who are willing to give you more time to respond in your business, Gen Z, the youngest.
What?
That's
I'd
exactly what I
assume
said.
that they would be like the TikTokers and the
Precisely, because
Snapchatters.
I've got two of those in my family, and I don't think that patient is the adjective that I use all the time. But I think now it's because they don't have as many responsibilities yet. In many cases, might not have kids yet, might not have as big of a job. They don't do as many activities because so much of their interactions are on phones. So they're not as scheduled, etc. So it's sort of like, you know what? It's okay if you take a little longer. But I didn't expect that. Conversely, the least patient generation, baby boomers. Which
Yeah, that's the opposite as well.
It also surprised me because I always thought, and I've literally heard this said in meetings, well, look, most of our customers are older, so we don't need to get back to them. They're retired. They have plenty of time. Turns out,
Yeah.
because they're retired, the only thing on their to-do list is to freak out about how come they haven't gotten an email yet, right? So
Yeah.
it's actually, they're like, where is it? Like, what's happening? And so that surprised me, definitely.
That's great. Yeah. What are some like? Is there a few other stats that is kind of your favorite stats from the big study you did?
One that I think is really important, that isn't necessarily a stat, but it's definitely a takeaway that's critical. We did a lot of psychological research, right? So how do you feel if a business is faster or slower than you anticipated, right? Because so much of this, and I really want to emphasize this, so much of this is not actually about speed. It's about exceeding expectations. So it's whatever they expect you to do, you're just a little faster than that, right? And so a lot of this is I'll give you an example. If you telephone somebody, phone provider, television provider, hospital, bank, whatever, and you're on hold, right? Oftentimes, right, you're on hold. They say two things. First, they tell you that calls will be answered in the order that they were received, right? And I always laugh about that because I think, what was the second choice for how calls will be answered? Calls will be answered by height. I'm like, wait, what? So they always say they're answered in the order they were received, which makes sense. But then they always say now, and this didn't used to happen, estimated hold time is 9 minutes or whatever, right?
Yeah,
So they give you a window. So what are they doing? They're setting expectations. Now, what smart companies do is they say estimated hold time is 9 minutes, but on the back end, they know they can do it in 7 minutes. So what they do is they set the bar here, knowing that they can exceed it, which triggers an important psychology in the mind of the customer, which says, wow, they're even better than they said.
Yeah.
So you've heard this your whole life, that it's better to under-promise and over-deliver.
Yeah.
And speed is absolutely one of the ways that you can make that work, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying lie to your customers, but so many businesses are optimistic about timelines,
Yeah. No, it's
and
like
you're
we
better off
like
being pessimistic and then doing better.
totally like we have a sales team and the customer success team, and if the sales team promises that this is gonna take a week and it takes 3 weeks to onboard, then the customer gets mad. If
Yeah,
the
you're
sales
you're
team says
setting
it's gonna
customer
take
success
4
people
weeks
up,
and
you're
we're
setting them up to fail.
yeah,
Yeah, you're absolutely setting them up to fail and to have a bad relationship, not a bad, but just a disappointing relationship from the beginning because the customer doesn't realize that of course it takes 3 weeks and it should take 3 weeks, right?
yeah, yeah,
What they interpret is they told me a week, it's going to take 3, therefore they don't care about our business as much as I thought,
yeah. That's
right?
really
Which is not a
good
psychology,
points, Jay.
not a psychology you want to start a relationship with. So here's the really interesting thing. We discovered in this research that speed of response is more powerful than speed of resolution. So speed of response is more
Yeah.
powerful than speed of resolution. So I'll give you an example of how this works in practice. If somebody needs something from you, maybe they email you, they leave you a message, whatever, and you don't know the answer, what do? You go look it up, right?
Yeah.
You ask accounting, you ask sales, you Google it, like whatever. You do some things, and then once you have the information, you respond and say, "Hey man, here's what you asked for." Don't do that anymore. Stop doing that. Because the entire time that you're figuring it out, the person who asked the question is slowly freaking out.
Yeah, so much. Like I was just imagining like being in a restaurant and the waiter not coming and say, "How's everything? The food is on its way. Do you need anything?" And when the food is ready, he comes with it. But
Yeah.
if he says nothing, then you're
You have
just
no
like,
idea.
"Where the fuck is my food?"
This is why on the phone that we'll answer your call in 9 minutes is so important because yes, customers hate to wait, clearly. But the thing they hate second most is being underinformed. Because we live in an era where information is all around us at all times. And so when
Yeah.
we are at an information deficit, it creates a lot of anxiety. So if I send you an email and I don't hear back for like 2 days, and that wouldn't happen, but let's just play the game.
Yeah.
Here's what happens in my head, okay? And this is true for everybody. This isn't just me, it's everybody. I haven't heard back. Did that go to spam? Did I attach something that would have sent it to spam?
Yeah.
Is he on vacation but just didn't set like an out of office?
Does
Is
he not
mad,
like
is he
me?
mad
Yeah.
at me? Right. Did I do something wrong? Should I follow up this email with a phone call, or does that make me seem desperate and sad? Right? Like you
Yeah.
play all these games, right? And meanwhile, you're just working on the thing. But I don't know that. See? So
No.
here's what you should do. And do this in your business. Teach your salespeople, teach your marketing people, teach your execs, teach your ops people, certainly teach customer support. And also, big tip, do this in your personal life. I've done this now for 2.5 years with everybody, my kids, my wife, my mailman,
Nice.
my friends. It's made such a huge difference. Here's what you do. We call it respond without answers. Somebody asks you a question or needs something. I just did it a minute ago before we jumped online. Somebody asks you a question or needs something. You instantly respond as soon as you can and say, great question. So good, in fact, I got to look it up. I'm going to do that, and then I'll get back to you. But the second that you say, I got it, it takes it off of their to-do list and they put it on your to-do list, which changes the psychology dramatically. And 2 things happen. 1, their perception of how fast you are goes way up. And 2, it actually buys you more time to get them the answer because, as I said, speed of response is more important psychologically than speed of resolution.
Yeah.
This makes such a big difference. Now, does it mean you've got to respond to everybody twice? Yeah, it does. But the first one is just like, I got it. That's all. It's one line. I got it. It's 2 minutes less, 30 seconds. And I'm telling you, do it with everybody your whole life. It's a crazy technique. It works great.
And it's super simple as well. Just respond. Say you're figuring it out.
Say I got it.
Jay, I don't want to steal too much of the thunder of the book, but I am curious about the 6-step framework. Can you walk us through just like the headlines of it, and then people will have to buy the book to get the elaborated
I would say it's really 6 pieces, not 6 steps. Okay, so it's not like sequential, except for the one we talked about earlier, the got it audit, where you figure out how long it takes you today. That one really is the one you should do first, so you can get a baseline. The other 5 you can do in any order. One of them is what we just talked about: respond without answers. That's absolutely one that you should execute on. One of the other ones we touched on a little bit, we'll just talk about a little bit more, is setting clear expectations. Because again, you should probably be faster than you are. Yes. But more importantly, you need to be faster than customers expect. And one of the best ways to do that is to manage and set expectations. So in some cases, businesses set optimistic expectations, like in your case with onboarding. And in other scenarios, businesses don't set expectations at all. So they don't even tell new customers what to expect in terms of how long it's going to take to onboard. And here's a little secret. If you don't tell customers how long it's going to take, they will assume it will happen instantly. Like they're not going to assume 6 months. They're going to assume now. Right. So unless you say, no, bro, it's not going to be now, it's going to be 3 weeks. And really important, especially for younger customers, you can't just say it's going to be a week or 3 weeks. You have to tell them why. You have to explain why. So one of the things that smart businesses do is when they quote a time for anything, onboarding, delivery, a house, they give them a very detailed sort of like timeline of what's going to happen and how long each step takes, so that the customer can be like, oh, yeah, man,
that's reasonable.
I understand why it takes 3 weeks. That makes okay, cool. And I got to tell you, I was so bad at this when I owned my consulting firm, like so bad. And I wish I would have written this book when I still owned the company, but I sold the company and then wrote the book because we worked with all large brands all around the world, big software companies, big consumer brands, etc., doing digital strategy, social media strategy, customer experience strategy. And so a company would come to us and say, Jay, can you guys make us a strategy for social media? Sure. So they'd write us a big check, and then my strategy team and I would build out a strategy. Now that would usually take 60 to 75 days.
Yeah.
Now internally, inside the company, we had super detailed project plans. This is due, so much so that in 13 years in business, we never missed a deadline, not once.
Yeah, nice.
Like we had it dialed. However, we never showed any of that to any customer ever. And so we would just take the money, right? And then we'd go making strategy. We are making strategy. Strategy is being created. And then at the end of like 2 months, we'd be like, hey, we're back. Here's your strategy. And the work was great. Clients were happy. Very successful business. But what I realize now, having written the book and done the research, is that entire 60-day period, clients were like,
what are you doing?
Did Jay steal our money and move to Barbados? Like, are they do they need anything from us? Like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
And so what I always tell people now, and the research bears this out, if it feels to you like you are over communicating to a customer, you're probably communicating just the right amount. Because they're not reading everything you send anyway. Like you're
No.
one of like 20 things on their list, right? So we say, oh, we sent them an email with an update. They didn't read the email, man. They've got a whole inbox full of stuff. Like, so
Yeah.
send 2 emails. Like you have to work harder to keep clients informed along the way, and it will definitely pay off in renewals and in loyalty.
This is like brilliant advice for anybody, in particular in customer success.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
It makes a big difference. I'll give you the last one. The last one I want to talk about today is this is another. I'm so stupid. This is another one where I'm like, why didn't I think of this when I still owned the company? It's called offer a fast pass. Okay, so here's how it works. We did the research on this. 1 in 4 customers, 1 in 4, will pay as much as 50% more to not wait. 1 in 4 customers will pay as much as 50% more to not wait. So if your price is 10, they will pay up to 15 to not wait. And you should give them that opportunity. Now, again, not every customer is going to want this, but some will. And those who want it desperately. They want it desperately. This is sort of the emergency plumber form of business, right? Like if you've got water gushing out of your flat, like the plumber will come, even if it's nighttime on Sunday. They will charge you more for sure, but they'll come. And every business can and should have a program like this. So
I'm thinking like a particular customer success service level agreement or something like that. If they want it, they can pay for it. Yeah.
Is instant service, and even not even in support, even like the provision of the thing. So again, going back to my consulting firm, we would have companies come to us and say, "Hey, we need a strategy and we need it now." Yeah. I'm like, well, here's the thing: we're already working on 3, so we can't get to you for 6 weeks. And sometimes they would wait, and sometimes they would go somewhere else. And what I realize now is what I should have done is said, okay, yes, we can move you to the front of the line, but it's going to cost you 25% more. Yeah. Okay. And some of them would have said, fine, because, for a company, for, a multi-billion-dollar company, even my invoice is not. And so what people always say is, okay, Jay, well, that's great, but somebody was first, and then what are you gonna do about those people, right? Who you're like bumping out of line. Yeah. Here's how you do it, okay? You call the company who was gonna be next, and you say, hey, we have a client who has an emergency situation. We would like to do their strategy first, back yours up by 4 weeks. I know that's disappointing, but what we'd like to do is take 15% off of your invoice for the trouble. Are you okay with
the arbitrage?
And they're like, great, sure, we just saved 15%. We don't have to wait 4 weeks. Okay, so you charge 25, you refund 15, you're keeping 10 for doing nothing. All you're doing is changing the sequencing of your work. And you've just boosted and it's pure profit because it doesn't cost you anything. Pure profit just for changing your sequence. And this works in every business. Like anybody can do this, and you should try it. And I'm not saying it's on your website, right? I'm not saying it's like call now for instantaneous social media strategy. Like, easy, right? But if somebody just says it in an intake call or in a demo or talking to sales, like you should have a circumstance where like we might actually be able to do that. Give us 1 day to make sure we can shuffle, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, super nice.
I'm like, should have thought of this earlier.
One thing I'm thinking about is that, so for me, the speed thing really translates into customer success work and sales work. Mm-hmm. Is there also a bridge to us who work in marketing where you can kind of make speed also your competitive advantage?
Absolutely. Number one, the speed at which marketing creates assets for use by sales and customer support is a big part of it. I think if you are going to be the leader in speed in your category, right? If you're going to put some of these principles into practice that I've been talking about, that's something that marketing then has to make known, right? It has to be part of the marketing narrative in the business, which is, hey, we're the fast ones in this industry. We won't waste your time. We're on top of it. Like marketing has to understand how to tell that story, because if you're not telling the story, people don't discover it until they've already given you money, which is better than nothing, but you don't have the same benefit as if you're kind of out front about it. So marketing needs to be really on top of this. I will say that you can't do this really well externally until you're pretty good at it internally. Because the truth is that in a lot of businesses, I would say most businesses, what slows them down is the handoffs inside the company. What slows the company down is when it goes from department to department or person to person or division to division. Those kind of interchanges can be not as streamlined as they should be. And so what that happens then is outwardly to the customer, it takes way longer than it probably should. And so clearly, if you're going to try and use responsiveness as a competitive advantage, you gotta work on your internal process, right? To make sure that when it goes from marketing to sales, when it goes from sales to support, when it goes from legal to marketing, right? Marketing wants to do some campaign. This happens all the time, right? Especially when I did a lot of social media work. Marketing wants to do some sort of campaign. It goes to legal. Legal takes 5 weeks to approve it. Like, bro, this is social media. Like
all the passion is gone then.
Yeah, we needed this in an hour. So you've got to find ways to make it faster internally before you think you can make it faster externally. Yeah.
Good advice. As we're approaching the end of the conversation now, then those of you who are listening and have a question for Jay, don't hold back now. Otherwise, I'll fire all the questions at Jay. But put them in on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you're sitting, and I'll pick them up.
Oh, I should tell you that if people want the research, right, that we did before the book, you can just have it. I don't even ask for your email address. I just want you to have it because it's important stuff and it will help you. Go to thetimetowin.com, thetimetowin.com, and just grab it.
I'll just put it here on LinkedIn right away, Jay, so people watching can fetch it. Jay, I don't know if it's rude to ask you about an old book of yours.
Sure.
But you've also wrote a book called Talk Triggers, which deals with the topic of like how to generate word of mouth, which is everyone knows that's the best marketing channel in the world. But
still,
can you actually manipulate it or construct it, or what
Absolutely.
what can people do? And I'll give you a limitation. If you're a B2B software company, particular, how can you proactively generate word of mouth for a company like ours, for example?
Yeah, you can do it in any business, and I would say that it actually works better in B2B. Let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of word of mouth. As you said, word of mouth is and has always been the best way to create customer relationships because it turns your current customers into volunteer marketers. And we believe people more than we believe companies. And so if a real person, if an existing customer says, these guys are awesome, you're going to listen to that more than if the company says, yeah, we're awesome.
Absolutely.
The problem is, the reason this doesn't work, I should say that. The reason you don't see businesses doing this very often is everybody makes the same mistake, okay? The mistake that they make is business leaders and professional marketers think that competency creates conversation. That if you just run a really good business, that customers will notice that and talk about it.
Yeah.
But they don't. That's not how word of mouth works. We don't talk about things that are good. We talk about things that are different. And that is brain science. It's just how everybody's head is wired. Like, hey, Stefan, let me tell you about this experience I had last night. It was perfectly adequate, right? Said nobody ever, right? Because there's no story there. It isn't a story. So word of mouth is just about stories.
Yeah.
And you tell super boring stories that don't matter? No. You tell interesting, different, exciting stories. You won't believe what happened to me. This is why, if you look in reviews, doesn't matter if it's G2 or Google reviews or whatever, almost never see 3-star reviews.
Yeah, no,
Because
no,
why
yeah.
would you write one? Hey, I hired Dream Data and I got pretty much what I thought I would, 3 stars. Like nobody does that, right?
Yeah.
So that's the problem is that people switch cameras here real quick. My camera got a little too hot. So that's the challenge is that people don't actually do that. So if you want to create if you want to create stories and
Yeah.
you definitely want to create stories, you have to give people something to talk about, right? And that something that they talk about is your talk trigger. So the way we define talk trigger in the book is it is a operational choice that you make that is designed to create conversations. Okay, so it's something that you do differently so that people will notice it and talk about it. And so that can be anything, right? It can be that you're faster than they expect. It can be that you're more empathetic than they expect. It can be that you're more useful than they expect. It's something that you do differently,
Yeah.
right? To make it faster. And you asked about a B2B software example. So there, so there back in the day, there was a VoIP company that this is pre Zoom, pre all of
Yeah.
those things. A company called Uber Conference,
Uh-huh.
and they were a pioneering kind of free calls over the internet business, very popular in B2B. So they, when you dial into a conference call in those days, for the conference call, you would show up, and then you'd wait until everybody else showed up on the call, right? And then meanwhile, you'd have sort of you'd have hold music, and usually it was just sort of boring, smooth jazz. Well, this company, their CEO was a musician. Alex Cornell's his name.
Yeah.
And they actually wrote a custom song about waiting on hold and what you're doing while you're on hold. And then you're on hold and you thought nobody was coming to the call, so you left, and then everybody showed up. It was very, very funny. And it was so successful that it got like hundreds of thousands of downloads as an actual song. And then people would actually hire Ring Central just because they wanted to wait on hold with that hold music. Like it literally became like a huge, huge deal. And that was what they were known for, was the on hold song at Ring Central. So it doesn't matter, what kind of business you are. You just have to understand that doing something different is what actually unlocks the conversation, and then figure out what your difference can be. And it works so well in B2B because almost nobody does it.
I think also this like for me that's almost the same as what we talked about with speed as well, Jay. That like if you set super high expectations to what you're gonna experience, then like most things will be a disappointment. But
Yeah.
if you hold back a little bit about revealing all your cards and then over deliver whenever people interact with your product or service, then there's a story to tell because you're actually giving them more than they expected.
Absolutely. Completely agree.
That's
Yeah. And
super fun.
yeah, and the thing about word of mouth is that is an area where marketing really needs to take the lead. They've got to figure out like what's going to work operationally, what can you do consistently all the time that's going to create conversations. How do we measure those conversations? Usually word of mouth or a talk trigger is executed sort of at the operations layer, but it's usually created and managed by marketing.
That's super good.
Yeah.
Oh, Jay, there's so many things you make me want to go and change or optimize at how we do things. To not steal more of your time, Jay.
Yeah,
If
see, go
people
ahead.
wanna,
My camera's dead, but I don't know what happened here.
yeah, I can hear it very
But I'm
clearly.
here.
I think
But I'm here.
if people wanna, what's the best path if they wanna get to know more about Jay after this conversation? If they wanna reach out to you, if they wanna just follow along to your work, what do they do?
Go to jaybaer.com, jaybaer.com.
Yeah.
That's my main website. You can also get on my newsletter list, which is thebearfacts.com. I send out a newsletter twice a month, and there's always some sort of story, anecdote, lesson like this. We've got podcast reviews, book reviews every issue. It's a really popular newsletter, and I have a great time writing it. And then you can always follow me on LinkedIn. If you want tequila advice, follow me on Instagram, Instagram and TikTok for tequila advice. I'm everywhere.
I just put in your website now as well, and I can see people saying wonderful insights. I love the vibe. So really good job, Jay.
Thanks.
If there's ever anything we can help you with on our side, or you're coming to Denmark, definitely
I would love
let
to.
us
Yeah,
know.
I need to come back. It's been too long. I would love to do it.
Need to work on the Danish roots there.
I know. My wife's a genealogist too, so we got to do a little more work over there.
Wonderful. Jay, thank you so much for taking the time to
My
speak with
pleasure.
me and enlightening the audience.